All right, what's up, everybody? 2 cents with Josh and Spence. Let's get it. We've got joining us today our man Chris Sims.
Very
Forward
special
Mortgage.
guest.
Oh, extra
Very
special.
special guest.
Inaugural guest.
The first
Wow.
one.
That's what inaugural means.
I'm too stupid to know that.
So Chris is a mortgage lender with Forward Mortgage. So welcome. Thanks for coming on the pod, Chris.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Very happy to be here.
Yeah, happy to have you. So tell us a little bit about yourself. So you're with Forward Mortgage.
Yeah, with Forward Mortgage, we're a wholesale brokerage company here in the Fargo-Moorhead area. We service purchases and refinances for North Dakota and Minnesota. And a little bit about myself. I came from the background of a military family. So in my family, it was military and work hard, go to school, good grades, and graduate and go on. I didn't go that path with the military. I went into the law enforcement. So my background is law enforcement. And eventually, I met my wife. And my greatest passion in life is my children. And so as we were starting having kids, I started looking at life. I'm like, law enforcement is great, but how can I impact lives more positive? And got into real estate, became a realtor, was amazing, and decided that mortgage was my next step. So as a mortgage broker, I'm boots on the ground, just like my brothers in arms with military, law enforcement, and so being boots on the ground in mortgage, I'm able to help people and lock arms with them to help them be approved for a home. And that's my greatest passion, is to help people get approved for a home. So that's a little bit about me.
Yeah, very cool.
How long have you been a mortgage broker then?
So going on 4 years as a mortgage broker.
Very cool. So what are some of the best things about that, and like the most challenges that you face day to day being a mortgage broker?
Oh man, honestly, it's I love talking to new people every day. It's creating relationships. When you have a 5-minute conversation with a client or just anybody in general, just talking about qualifications to get ready to buy a house, I can take that first 5 minutes of a conversation and let them know if they're going to be pre-approved or not. And then we take a direction in that conversation to get them on the path to homeownership. So one of the things that I do a little differently is way forward. So a way forward is, let's figure out a baseline where they're at right now, and let's go forward to get your goals, and then work backwards. And so if you're ready to go with your qualifications to buy a house now, we go forward. The roadmap to success starts right there. Now, if that individual needs a little bit of credit repair, then the way forward could be a certain timeline, like 6 months out, 9 months, and I become their accountability partner, more like their coach. And as a coach, we're in touch, and we're going to be talking about situations to get them to their goals much faster.
It's insane how much that clarity benefits everybody. You know what I mean? Like you said, in just 5 minutes, because like when we're meeting with first-time home buyers, it's a lot of like, well, if we do this, then we can do this. But if we do this, but I'm not sure about this, and then then you're like talking about this many things, right? Versus like, okay, cool. Well, let's get you in to talk to Chris. Let's get you in to talk to somebody. Ask the right questions you know how to ask. Then all of a sudden, instead of like this many options, like, oh, okay. And then all of a sudden, like, clarity is power, and now we've got a way forward. Like you said, a way forward. We've got a game plan set in place. And I feel like we get this a lot, and I'd love to get your take on it. Like, a lot of times people are like, well, I'm scared to get my credit dinged. I don't want to, I'm scared I won't get pre-approved, or I'm scared, like, what happens? Like,
Absolutely, yeah. So that'll be the next step after the conversation. So having a conversation with a professional mortgage lender, you're going to find out what direction we should go. And the next step would be to fill an application. With an application, you're going to get a credit pull. Now, a credit pull establishes a baseline. It's something very tangible that your mortgage professional is able to work with to provide the steps forward. Because until we have that credit pull, we're just guessing. We're guessing based on what you tell me and we want to believe that everybody is telling the truth. But some people forget, and some people just don't know. So ignorance is bliss. And accuracy with clarity drives forward that roadmap to success. And so that credit pull, here's a little insight on that. The misconception is, oh, the credit pull hits you, that dings you. Yes, it does. It may hit you between 4 to 9 points on the initial credit pull. Now, what happens here? So the credit bureaus, they're going to say, oh my gosh, Josh, you just pulled your credit. You're going to take out a large debt. Awesome. Well, here's what we're going to do. We're going to ding you, whoop, and then in 60 days, you're going to establish those points back. Let's say 9 points. You get those 60 days, 9 points back in 60 days. Now you get a little bit higher up. Because what happens is the credit bureaus are like, hey, we want to ding them because that's what we're supposed to do. But then let's raise their score so they can have more purchasing power with a higher credit score to lower interest rates to get more debt. So within 60 to 90 days, you recover that score and you recover much faster. So no fear on credit pulls on that end.
Well,
So,
yeah.
so where does that misconception come from? Like, is it if you go and apply for 10 loans in a week? Like, is that when it really dings your credit, or why do people think that?
That is a great question. So there's two parts to answer your question. So back in 2009, Obama put into play a mortgage shopping rule. There's a Mortgage Act that allows any consumer to shop for a mortgage within 30 calendar days, and your credit will not get affected. So if you apply for credit on May 1st, by May 30th, you can have your credit pulled as many times for financial or mortgage purposes, banking purposes, as you so desire to get the best terms and structure for your loan.
Which makes perfect sense, right? Because like everybody, like you should be incentivized to shop, or like not be disincentivized to shop, right?
Right.
So it's like, yeah, go out there and see what everybody has to offer, like what different, and then we'll go down that rabbit hole. But I do want to back up and just say, like, I've seen firsthand, like you had somebody come in, again, going like speaking to that. Oh, is I muted that whole time?
It was still picking you up.
Oh, okay, cool. So speaking to that, like people are afraid to come in, and I've done that too. Like I've gone into the bank and like I know my credit's like pretty good, and like, but it's just a vulnerable feeling when you're like sitting on the edge of the desk. It's just weird. So, but when it's actually you sitting in the seat and it's your credit, and it's just different. But I've seen firsthand, somebody came to you and said like, hey Chris, I want to get pre-approved for a mortgage, because I want to get this place sold and find something new. So you were able to look at this person's credit and come up with a game plan. Mm-hmm. And like, it was wild how in detail you were able to get
I was going to bring this up too.
With that. It was wild. Like, you pay off X amount by, like, and like you alluded to earlier, like being somebody's coach, it wasn't like, yeah, if you pay that off, your credit score will go up. It was like, it was you pay down this much on this card by this day, and then we're going to do this, and then we're going to do this, and then we're going to do this, and then once that happens, your score is going to go up by this. That was wild, and that was such an empowering thing for this person, because it wasn't like a yes or no. It was, well, not at this time, but not. It wasn't like you go figure it out and come back and we'll try again. It was like, here, we're in, like you said, locking arms, we're in this together. And it was very, very cool. So I was blown away by that.
Yeah, the whole thing I think about all of our jobs is to be able to put people in the right position to make their own decisions and stuff like that. And you doing that is doing exactly that. Yeah. And it's giving them that roadmap, and it's just crazy how in depth you get with them, and just very cool. So.
Yeah, appreciate that. When you come from passion, it should show in what you do, and I truly want to help people. It's about relationship building. The money will be there, it's going to be there. But how you can impact someone's life, that's what can make a difference in your life as well. And so I take great pride in that. I appreciate you brought that up. And yeah.
Well, it's wild. So we talked about that. We talked about that earlier today in the mind. Like we have a morning mindset meeting on Tuesdays where we all kind of get together and talk about mindset type stuff. But then we also talked about that in our Jaster group meeting yesterday. Like, ultimately, like, our goal, like you said, coming from passion, coming from contribution, our goal is like spread joy and empower other people, right? So we went, last week we talked about, well, like, what does spreading joy look like? How can we do that better? Yesterday we talked about empowering people, and that's the exact same conversation we had yesterday. Like, putting people in position to succeed, putting people in a position to make an educated decision what's best for them, and then removing roadblocks for those people, and that's just awesome. And then to piggyback on that, it's like any type of success is a byproduct of like adding value to other people.
Absolutely.
Right? So like the money or any financial success is just like a lagging indicator of the amount of value that you add to other people.
Absolutely.
And sometimes like the value is telling them not to buy a house right now, or not to sell a house, or
That's exactly it.
But so I think that's very cool, and it definitely shines through in like watching you interact with your clients, and everybody on our team that's worked with you, I've never heard of anything other than this dude is awesome. So it's very, very cool.
Appreciate it.
Yeah,
Awesome.
Well, one thing that I think a lot of people ask you, and we want to know, is where are interest rates at? What are they doing?
Absolutely.
What are you thinking they're going to be like at the end of the summer? All that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
For
did
sure.
you bring your crystal ball in here?
Man.
If anyone has one, it's you.
Oh yeah. No doubt.
So in our profession now more than ever, we have to stay true to, or we have to keep our ear to the railroad track, so to speak. So all the announcements that come out from the feds, we have to watch that closely, because the impact of any decisions that are being made with the Fed level, the consumer impact is about 2 weeks after. So for instance, a week and a half ago, Thursday, there was a announcement that all prices or interest rates were going to increase by 0.5% or 0.5% in interest rate. Not just
It's a pretty big jump, right?
It's a huge jump. Now, a 0.5% interest rate, on a $250,000 loan, you're looking at probably about $38 a month in $38 a month in payment. And so we had that announcement come out a week and a half ago. We're starting to see the increases in interest rates. So, for example, and I can kind of future cast this as well. So, anytime there's an announcement, it's kind of like when you're on the interstate, right? And you're going 75 miles an hour. Well, there's actually a law that says you cannot go from 75 down to 25, because that's just too drastic. Mm-hmm. Well, inversely, interest rates cannot go from 4% to 5%. They go 4, 4 1/8, 4 1/4, eighth, and then back up to 5 to what the announcement is. So, given this announcement back, a week and a half ago on Thursday, we've seen about 0.3% interest rate increase. So we're not quite there. The 8%, the other leg in 0.8%, is probably going to hit us probably by next Monday, next Tuesday, next Wednesday. And so it's a gradual increase to get to the announcement point. Once we're there, we're going to flatline for a little bit. We're expected to hear that there's going to be another announcement for interest rate hike around August, which will come due around October, November. Okay. So interest rates right now for a qualified buyer around a 720 credit score, conventional financing, 5% down, so minimum percentages down. You're looking at right around 5.375 to 5.625, depending on the factors of their credit qualifications. So we're looking at probably about November to seeing a rate around 6.25, 6.5. Wow. Now, this is just speculation based on the conferences that are being held by the feds weekly and biweekly. And so that data and previous data of the MBS market, which is our interest rate market, going off of the previous year trends up to this point, year to date, expectations in November, we're going to see an all-time high here in the last 5 years.
Really?
Yeah, and it's wild because like it's still, and like anybody that bought a house in like the 80s or 90s will tell you like, well, we bought it at 18%, so it's like historically still like wildly low rates. However, yeah, it's a far cry from like 2.5%. So
well, and they also bought the house for $100,000.
Yeah,
right now it's worth
That's very
700.
Right.
Very
It's just
true.
crazy.
But the Fed, like, they do that on purpose though, right? Because that's how they can better control, right? Like if they're at bottom dollar interest rates, then the Fed can't lower them anymore. So then they can't kind of play hot and cold with the market sort of thing, right? Like that's kind of by design. So they want them at that. I don't know what the sweet spot is, but I feel like I went to a family reunion or whatever, like a Keller Williams thing where Gary Keller was talking about that. And well, it makes sense, but yeah, it's curious what that's going to do to the housing market and stuff like that. But it's like we certainly haven't seen any type of slowdown yet. You know, it's been pretty wild out there.
Absolutely.
I feel like it's starting to come though. Like weather's warming up, we're getting more listings. You know, it's not as competitive, and I feel like part of it is because the interest rates are coming up. People are getting scared now, but they're still
Well, it's one of those things. So, like what you were saying, like a 0.5% interest. So, the average sales price in Fargo-Moorhead is approximately $250, right? So, like you said, a 0.5%, that's $38 a month. So, you take that same family that if husband and wife both make $50,000, they've got $100,000 household income. So instead of being able to afford a $350,000 house, $400,000 house, now they can afford whatever. So it impacts their buying power, which then, but again, like Fargo-Moorhead market, like it just keeps growing. Like more people keep moving to Fargo. So it's like that's always what I thought we would see. Like, right, these rates are going to come up, and then all of a sudden things are going to kind of slow down, and then people, like you said, are going to be like, oh shoot, we missed the peak. So then a bunch of homes were going to hit the market, but we just have, I mean, not yet anyway. We haven't seen anything like that. But yeah, it's interesting how it all works together.
So in the market trends, there's going to be a two-year rebound usually happens when major impact is happening. So we just had a huge positive impact with, we're seeing interest rates 2s, high 1s, depending on the loan terms. We've seen that for about, right around 30 months. It was insane. We'll probably never see interest rates like that in our lifetime. Let's just be real. So we're comparing the interest rates to that rate, current interest rates to that historic time,
right,
and thinking, oh my gosh, this is bad. Actually, it's not. So you brought up a good point. Back in 1976.
Super smart.
Yeah, incredibly. So back in 1976, there's data that goes back from 1976 to today, and the average interest rate is 7.61%. And I'm not making up these numbers. I can show data. 7.61% is the average interest rate going over about 48 years. So 48-year turn time or table time is 7.61%. It's insane. So when you guys have conversations as realtors and you talk to especially renters and first-time home buyers and they're maybe got some spook about interest rates. Interest rates are amazing right now, guys. And so that's the message. The positive message is, oh my gosh, interest rates are amazing, because what you're going to do is you're going to build wealth through ownership. And that wealth through ownership is way better than 100% interest rate as a renter. Or paying somebody else's rent. Or paying somebody else's mortgage.
Yeah.
So would you rather pay 100% interest rate or darn near 6%?
Right.
And 6% interest rate, what do you gain in return? Well, you just cash flowed your house. So in 5 years and 60 months, if you bought a $250,000 home, what happens? Well, you're going to make interest and principal payments on your home, 60 months of those. So as you're making payments, well, your loan amount goes down. So in 5 years on a $250,000 house, you're going to be probably putting in right around $18,000 of principal. So now your loan amount is $228,000. Well, in 5 years at 3% attrition or 3% interest rate or 3% appreciation, your house value is right around $289, $290. And so $290 to $228,000, you're looking at $62,000 in wealth right there. So if you look 5 years ahead and dream about where you want to be, buy a house. Buy a house to create that net worth, because the average net worth of a renter is $6,200.
That's wild.
Wow.
An average homeowner's net worth is $225,000 on average.
And then you take that same scenario. So 5 years down the road, you've now got, so say you're up 60 grand, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we'll say 60 months worth of rent payments at $1,000. Well, that's 60 grand the other way. We
Correct.
now spent 60 grand that way. So that's $120,000 swing.
Yep.
In addition to like being able to just have your own place, your own lawn, right. And not to say that home ownership doesn't come with some costs and stuff like that too, but now you got your own lawn, you got your own, like there's a lot of stuff, a lot of pride in ownership and stuff, like other ancillary stuff that goes into it as well.
And guys, I would love to just make that a little bit deeper. I have 4 amazing, beautiful children. I have a wife who works as hard and as much as I do. When you build a family, there is something there. You're going to be leaving a legacy behind, and you can do that through homeownership. Now, let's take that same scenario. Now, your family gets bigger. You want 4 kids, but you only have 1 now. And you need an extra bedroom. You need the nursery next to the master bedroom, whatever, what have you. Bigger laundry room, whatever the wife wants, right?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Now you need to upgrade. You need to upgrade to that 250 home up to a 400,000. Well, now you have 60K in that home that you can put down towards a down payment on that $400,000 to $500,000 house. What happened in that 5 years? Life got better. You're able to get a promotion. You're able to get the job you wanted. You graduate from school. Whatever happens, the positive life cycle events that are happening coincide with building wealth through the home. Now you're ready for that leap. Now you're ready for that $400,000 house and the extra 2 kids that come along with it and the dog.
Yeah. And I don't think a lot of people realize that that's, like, I think most first-time homebuyers think that you have to have $20,000 set aside for a down payment. Yeah. But when people already have a home, they're using that money to buy their next one. So a big thing that's stopping people from getting into that first home is the down payment issue. So what kind of solutions are you able to come up with for people like that? Because not everyone has 10 to 20 grand sitting around.
Gosh, this is a great segue, guys. So it all starts with one, right? So you guys hear it, but as we educate our clients and our friends and family, it really does start with one. And the gateway to get into one is usually the money's available for closing, the funds to close them out. So there are programs available through housing assistance programs that allow first-time home buyers in North Dakota, Minnesota to get a home. So Minnesota and North Dakota have a program available for down payment assistance. Now, it doesn't take care of everything. The misconception is, oh yeah, I get down payment assistance, it's going to cover the whole thing. Well, let's do some education real quick. So you got your down payment. Let's call it a down payment bucket. You got closing cost bucket. And so those two are completely separate from each other. North Dakota Housing, what they do is they say, okay, you have $15,000 that you need for closing. That's how much your mortgage institution says that you need to have available for closing. Well, North Dakota Housing is going to come in and say, at 3% of the loan amount of your home, we're going to give you that assistance. So quick math, $250,000. We're going to take 3% as the down payment. So now you're at about $242,000. 3% of that is the assistance. So that assistance eats away at that $15K. So let's call it now $7,500. The client still has to bring $7,500 to closing. So going off average prices, we start there. So now with that little bit of education, $250,000 home, getting assistance, which is available through a sponsoring lender with North Dakota and Minnesota Housing. That lender needs to be sponsored through the states to offer those programs. And it's universal across the board at those lending institutions. At Forward Mortgage, we are sponsored for down payment assistance programs.
Very good to know.
So now we have a $250,000 purchase price. So a first-time home buyer should have, with today's market, to be ready, willing, and able to buy a house at the blink of an eye with a multiple offer situation, $7,500 in their account.
Okay.
Now, that $7,500 can come from mutual bonds or mutual funds, stocks and bonds, obviously checking, savings, a gift from mom, dad, relative, spouse, what have you. There are some regulations on who can give a gift, so talk with your lender about that. Mm-hmm. But to get that money, there's a lot of options to get that. So around $7,500 collectively.
And that's a down payment, closing costs, all that kind of stuff is in that $7,500, do you think?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep. And so you guys maybe are thinking the next question is, well, how can we eat away at that, right? So when you guys are making an offer, there's a thing called seller concessions. So obviously the prevalency of the market, you guys can speak to that, but that is another way that that number can be drove down to then help the clients out.
Yep.
Yep. Yeah.
And that's one thing that I've done quite a bit in the past is you basically ask the seller to pay for your closing costs. Say you want 5,000 seller paid closing costs. Well, then maybe instead we'll offer you $5,000 more than what you want. So then it's kind of a wash, and basically you're lumping your closing costs into your loan so you can pay it monthly rather than one big lump sum.
Yeah.
It's kind of how we've been doing it.
And it depends on the market. So like in like the kind of more traditional balanced market, there's much more of that back and forth negotiator. Where you might say, well, we'll give you full price of $250, but you seller pay $5,000 of our closing costs. So that's like a net sale to you, the seller, of $245,000.
Yeah.
The market that we're in right now is pretty hot. So more so of what we're seeing now, because the seller would be like, well, doesn't really bother me as long as I net what we need to net, like that $250. So if you want it, and like we'll pay it whatever, but instead, like what you were alluding to, how about you give us $255,000 and then we'll pay your. So it's almost like you're adding those closing costs into your loan at that point.
Yeah,
exactly.
So it's less money out of pocket, which gets you in the home, which then sets you up to take advantage of that appreciation, debt pay down, etc.
And those are conversations that you need to have with your trusted mortgage professional up front. Not just the client, but the realtor on board. We're all a team. And we go into that offer together with that plan. Then that gets executed. The only caveat to that plan, what I'm seeing in the market is appraisal gaps or anything to do with the appraisal.
Right.
So a lender can only lend on the appraised amount or the sales purchase price, whichever is less. So if the appraised value comes at $255, purchase price is $255, that is the most beautiful situation.
Mm-hmm.
So exactly. So we can touch on that, or we can talk about that later.
Yeah.
But I feel like I'm getting in the weeds. So
Oh, you're good. So I mean, another thing that we're interested in learning about is more of the investing stuff. Me and Josh both want to learn more about that, and I'm sure some listeners do too. But do you work with a lot of real estate investors and help them get financing? What kind of stuff are they doing and that you're seeing as successful?
Oh man, there's so many options for investors nowadays than the traditional black and white mortgages or paper mortgages that other brick and mortar places will offer. So the investors are breaking away from the box, and the box is 20% down, and you have to have this, you have to have that. Non-traditional financing, which I can offer, is opportunities that we can look at your cash flow. We can look at what are you doing as an investor. Now, your debt-to-income ratios may not qualify you for a traditional mortgage. Well, what are some options we can do outside the box that can get you into the home, help create an investment portfolio for you, and not go traditional financing? Non-traditional financing, we don't care about your credit score. We really don't care about your income. We're basing a lot of our decision-making on the debt service coverage ratios and your cash flow. So
is that your potential cash flow on the property you want to buy, or is that what you're getting on other properties?
Both. So
Okay.
the subject property that you're about to purchase, it will go off the rent analysis that the appraiser will provide us.
Okay.
And so that is called a rent service schedule, or a rent analysis service schedule that the appraiser will give to us based on median rental values of that type of a unit in a distance to that property. So we can take the future income off of that investment property, as well as the current leases that you have in place with your other investments. And so that right there is your income. That's how we can qualify based on cash flow. And it doesn't matter if your debt to income is 60, 70, 80, 90%, you can still get the house based on cash flow. So lots of options for investors. You don't have to have 20, 25% down anymore. You can do it for as little as 10% down with no MI. It's a lot of beautiful options out there right now for investors.
That's very cool, because I'm 34, so I came out of college in 2010, which was after 2008, which is when lending restrictions really tightened up. So it's like, so the pendulum swung that way where it's like, yeah, give me, 40% down and your firstborn and all that type of stuff. So being like a dude that's like, okay, well, I've already got a family, started that pretty early. So we got that, starting a new career. So got feel like everything's kind of going against me. Like I know what I want to do and I have goals, but it's like you would hear about back in the day, like, yeah, so-and-so was able to get into this apartment with nothing down and whatever. It's like, well, that just doesn't seem fair, does it? But so I feel like lending restrictions really did tighten up, which made it very challenging for the new guy to get started. But what you're saying is they've gotten a little bit looser, a little bit more creative to be like, okay, does this make sense, like in like the totality of your situation, like your net worth, your income, the deal, etc. So that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
So for a new investor like myself, and feel free to call me a big dumb idiot if I am here, but is there,
Chris
Josh,
would never do that.
shut
Chris
your mouth.
would never do that. Chris would
I was
never
talking to
do
Chris,
that.
not Josh.
I will do that off air.
Is there a way for a new investor to get into an investment property for, little to no down?
Absolutely. So traditional financing is the best way to do that.
Okay.
So because you don't have that cash flow yet, unless you have other businesses that can prove cash flow. But as a first-time real estate investor, their best opportunity to get into a 2, 3, or 4 unit property is to be the primary resident of that property.
Okay.
So you have a 4 unit property, you would take residence in one of the units, rent out the other 3, and that becomes your primary. Under primary guidelines through conventional or FHA or VA financing, you can get in for as little as 3, 3.5, or no down, depending on the type of financing you qualify for.
Okay.
So if you were a veteran, you can get that house for 0 down.
Nice.
If the seller pays for your closing costs, you can literally get in with less than right around $500 and start collecting net worth right there. FHA is 3.5%. In conventional, you're at 3% down. If you need assistance, there's programs that can offer assistance up to 4 units. Not North Dakota Housing. There are other programs that I have access to nationwide on a federal level that will allow up to a 4 unit property for assistance. So to get into your first property, 2 to 3, 4 unit, it is very doable. The caveat is you got to live there. And you
So how long do you have to live there?
How does that get policed exactly?
Is Chris going to show up at my door and say, does
Chris,
Spencer still live here?
I don't know if you can get all of his shoulders in the shop, but that's the last dude I want.
Yeah.
Right. Like, sir.
At closing, you sign a bunch of paperwork about mortgage fraud, and you're going to be taking residence to the property. You're going to be switching your utilities and your mailbox address, your postal address to that property. For FHA, it is 1 year. Okay. So 1 year to move on and up in your mortgage situation. It gets heavily policed in government loans. Now, for conventional financing, I will say that you can take residence, and within 91 days, you can figure out what you want to do with your next step after that.
Hmm.
Yep.
Interesting.
Yeah. But government loans are going to be heavier policed. Conventional, there's a little more leniency based on that. So
Sure. Well, it's cool, and the beauty is that we know where you work, so it'll be easy to get you back on the pod here. But I think like the biggest takeaway I would imagine that especially like first time home buyers would gather from this pod, hopefully, is like you're just there to help, right? So it's not like the idea of like walking into a bank and then there's the guy in the suit and tie like looking down his nose at you and it's like, oh, right. It's like it's just somebody here. I'm just trying to help. I'm just trying to help you get what you want, and you can either do it right away or you can't. And if you can't, I'm going to help you get to that point, right?
Absolutely. And it's a team approach. That was one big reason I got into mortgage lending, is just to be different and a step above. And when you speak with me and my team, we're going to be able to provide those solution-based answers to you immediately, and we're going to make you feel part of the team. And so the decisions that we make together are going to impact your journey to success. And if you can't enjoy the journey, a lot of people might back out. They might give up. Well, that's where we come in as an accountability coach. We work with with you as realtor partners, and we're in this together. And so it's a very non-threatening situation, and we work out a plan together. So,
Nice. So how can people take that first step? How can people get a hold of you and get started?
So nowadays you can do everything online. So I set up my company to be remote based. So anywhere in the world, you can apply for a mortgage with our company. And so it all starts with a phone call, video call, in-person meeting, whatever is most convenient for the client. And a application happens at the time of phone call or immediately after. And so the application is very straightforward. Personal identifying information. The application will talk about your job history, your residence history. There's some questions on there, and pretty yes and no questions, non-threatening questions on there. The application is going to ask you about your assets, which is are your monies available for closing. So checking, savings, if you have investments, 401ks, things like that. So in totality, the online application will take you about 10 to 15 minutes to complete over your phone, tablet, computer, what have you, or we can do it here in the office, whatever works for you. Once you complete the application and we have that conversation, the pre-approval is the next step, and the pre-approval takes about between 4 hours to 24 hours to complete on the lending side. For us to do due diligence, we do an underwritten pre-approval. It is much different than a pre-qualification. Pre-qualification is, hey, here's a piece of paper. Based on what you told me is true, go buy a house. And that
as long as you aren't lying.
Exactly.
I call that like the fun uncle thing, where it's like, yeah, knock yourself out, kid, and then it's like 3 days before closing, and say, oh, you can't buy.
We'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
It's a much different animal, and from working with sellers, like you get, I mean, that those pre-approvals, those pre-qualifications matter, and who sends them in matters. So
exactly. So once you get that golden ticket, that pre-approval letter, then it's off to the races. You the client and the realtors, you guys have the fun job. You go out, you're out there, you're shopping homes, and the mortgage guy or girl is there as your resource. You're just a tool in your tool belt. As a team, we help the client find a home. As you're shopping for homes, we have a no holds barred, or our rules engagement is a no holds barred line of communication. 9 o'clock at night, 7 in the morning, weekends, we're available to you. We do business by cell phone, which means you're directly tied to our hip. And speed of service is key in this industry or our market right now. And so as your clients are shopping for homes, if you're at the front step, you love the home, you just toured it feels good. Well, let's make sure the numbers feel good. Let's take care of the logical side. If you like the payment, you like the down payment, you like the closing costs, we can provide that to you on the spot while you're staring at the front light. And before you leave, when you drive home at night, you're ready to make an offer. And so it's powerful right now to have a mortgage individual with the same mindset as you guys, as the realtors, to get the job done. So that's really the next steps. There's a lot of details in between, but how we get there is as a team approach.
It's so wild how just accurate that is, and how much our team's experience with you guys has been like it, because a lot of people say that anytime, but it's like, but then you call them at 7 o'clock on a Friday, and then you get a text back a couple hours later or whatever, like, oh, I'll call you Monday or whatever. So that's, I mean, having a sense of urgency in this market is absolutely key, and just having that person that's with you all the time is big time.
And it matters who your mortgage lender is, who your realtor is. Like, we aren't all the same. Some of us do a better job than others. Some of us, are just better at it. And Chris Sims is one of them.
Yeah. I'm so glad you brought that up. And
I'm so glad you said all the best.
Say more stuff like that.
Say more. Feed me. Oh man. No, but seriously, like just for the client's best interest, you guys will see an online lender's pre-approval letter.
Yeah.
And what are you guys' reaction to that? Like when you see that, what happens? Like immediately.
Heart sinks.
It's not. Yeah. It's not good. And
Yeah.
It's not good.
Yeah.
So disappointment, I would say.
Yeah.
especially in our market, North Dakota is not like the rest. Online lenders work with the coast, the south, and then not much of the Midwest. Our area is different. You need a local lender that has your back. And so I'm so glad you brought that up, that we're not all the same.
100%. Well, let's get wrapped up here. We'll get there's about 45 more things I want to ask you
Oh,
and
for
get
sure.
into,
We'll make him a recurring guest.
yeah,
He'll have to come on again.
absolutely.
This was awesome. Thank
Yeah,
you so
appreciate
much.
it, guys. Thank you.
Chris Sims, Forward Mortgage. Thanks so much, man.
Yep, thank you.
Watch for deer.
Shake a bug.